I've always loved Zephaniah 3:17, and particularly for the last few verses, which I'm actually going to look at in another video. But I came to it again recently and I just focused on the beginning of it. For the Lord your God is living among you. I mean, there's so much we can get out of that. I think, firstly, just remembering who's living amongst us. It's not just any person, it's the Lord our God. The one who's full of peace, the one who's full of joy, the one that has all wisdom. I don't know, maybe sometimes like me, you wake up in the day and you got a busy day ahead, or you got a situation you don't know how to handle and or where to start, and maybe you go to Google and you search in how do you deal with this, how do you get information on this. But if we really believe that right there, living amongst us is the person that has all the knowledge, all the wisdom, way better than Google search, way better than AI coming up with an answer, the right phrase to say, whoa, wouldn't I turn to him? If I really believe that the God Almighty is living amongst us, is living with me, that would change so much. And so that's one of the first things I thought about when I thought about this verse. But then as I mulled it over, I was thinking, if I really believed he was living amongst us, how would I do life differently? If I knew somebody was coming to stay, for example, I have a friend called Emir who lives in Ethiopia, and if I know he's coming to stay, I know that he particularly likes spicy food, so I begin to buy in some spices. I know he likes goat meat, and that's quite difficult to find, but I do know some shops nearby where I can get goat if I ask for it. Or if one of my children comes home, I have a number of children, and I know what some of their preferences are. You know, some prefer rice, some prefer pasta, some prefer this kind of dish or this type of drink. And so if I know that they're coming in, when I go and do my shop, I especially choose those things. One of my daughters was recently back and she loves football. So as I was making up her bed, I kind of chose one of her kind of football kind of duvet cover sets. My mum's going to come in a few weeks' time. I'm going to make sure the heating in is on really hot, and I'll probably get some flowers just to put in a vase next to the bed, just to make it look pretty for her. Why? Because she's coming to live amongst us at this point in time. And I could go on, and probably into your mind comes different people who, when they come to visit, you do things differently because of them. And so as I reflect, and my challenge to you again today is, do we really believe that he is coming to live amongst us? We're told in John 1 that Jesus came. He came to tabernacle, to dwell, to live. It's not just like the illustrations I gave where somebody's just coming for a day or two and you make slight alterations. When somebody begins to come and they come and to live amongst you, they're going to be there for a prolonged period of time. You begin to make some real alterations. You empty out maybe your wardrobe so they can have the whole wardrobe. You might say to them, hey, this is the kitchen and this is your drawer and you can put your food in there. And eventually, if you're really living together and you're living in community, then your food is their food is your food. And again, I could go on, but I think you get the idea. And my challenge to myself, do I really believe he's living among us? How would I do life differently? Where would I look for my source of peace and knowledge and information and joy? And lastly, as I look at the beginning of this verse, the other thing I began to think about was God living amongst us, as in he lives amongst us in our community. We're very familiar with some verses in Matthew 25 where Jesus is just explaining what it's going to look like at the end. And he talks about people coming and saying and to them, When I was hungry, you didn't feed me. When I was thirsty, you didn't give me a drink. You didn't visit me in prison. And they will say, oh, Jesus, we would have done that. Yes, if you had been there, if we really realized that you were living amongst us, if you were there, we would have given you drink. We would have given you food. And then he would say, when you do it for the least of them, you do it for me. So I've just been thinking about that as I've been doing life, as I've been going round doing my normal jobs and errands that I do. And I interact with people saying, God, help me see this person as you living amongst me. How would I interact with them? How would I talk to them differently if I really believed that you are in them? So I know I packed a lot into this little clip from just those few lines, literally a line. For the Lord your God is living among you. Let us live differently because of that truth.